I want to speak to Ms. Mattola. It's great to see the University of Saskatchewan here, and as my colleagues will get to know the U of S very well, as did my colleagues on the Environment Committee in the last Parliament. Earlier this week, the Bangladeshi High Commissioner was here at this committee, and he spoke about the very strong economic ties that are there between Saskatchewan and his country of Bangladesh. And his message was quite simple, and that was he wants Bangladesh to be included in the single student direct stream. So that post-secondary institutions in Saskatchewan, and he specifically mentioned U of S and Sask Polytech, so that they could benefit from an exchange of knowledge and economic activity. So, Ms. Mattola, can you tell me how having international students expands the economic activities in Saskatchewan, and in particular to my constituents in Saskatoon West?
Thank you for the question. Again, as I mentioned, our international students are highly motivated, very entrepreneurial. Their interest in business ownership, whether it is in taking over existing businesses or starting their own businesses, is very high. They often also come from more collectivist cultures. So there is a very strong community orientation in the way they operate also outside of their academics and our campus community. And Going to your remarks on Bangladesh, Bangladesh is in our top 5 largest source countries. So we would certainly be happy to see more of Bangladeshi students in our community and on our campuses.
So the idea of including them in the student direct stream, would that be helpful to the U of S if they were in that same stream?
Absolutely. It's a easier process for students, and allows students who are recruited to be converted in a more efficient manner.
Great. Now switching gears a little bit, Ms. Mattola, I want to get your perspective on the rejection rates. You spoke of that, and that's an issue. And we've heard even within the various student visas being granted for individuals coming to Canada, there's some bias and racism built into the system. Student direct stream countries in Asia, such as China and India, have quite high acceptance rates by IRCC, while Francophone countries, student direct stream countries from Africa, like, for example, Senegal and Morocco, have quite low acceptance rates. So as an English-speaking institution, what is the U of S experience on dealing with applicants from students coming from former British colonies in Asia versus the French colonies in Africa?
Thank you for the question again. I would agree that we are certainly seeing more better approval rates for applicants coming from Asian countries than from several African countries, and don't always know what this is. At times, it has been incomplete applications, issues with document translations. Of course, we have a very capable team and multilingual team here, so French doesn't pose issues per se. But in the case of some other countries, if documents are not in English, of course, this could cause some delays, and then that has a snowball effect on having to defer your studies and having to maybe consider other options as well if students can't begin their programs in a timely manner.
And just a little bit further on you mentioned that Saskatchewan is a smaller center. It's quite rural in its nature. Does that pose any issues with you with recruiting students? Have you noticed any differences? Is it more difficult to get students to U of S? And do you have any recommendations on what could be done to improve that?
Our campuses are in the larger cities in Saskatchewan, so I'm not sure if we necessarily encounter the same issues that maybe some regional colleges in Saskatchewan do. The transportation, for example, accessibility for international students who don't always have driver's licenses, and public transportation in Saskatchewan may not be the same as it is in some other provinces. Those are some very common issues that we don't often think of necessarily living in this environment and being used to driving around. So yeah, that could be an example of a small issue that becomes a big issue for an international student if they are in a rural community, and something we could maybe think of collaboratively, how to make Saskatchewan more accessible to international students as a whole.
If you think of Saskatoon versus Toronto, Saskatoon's a lot smaller. Does that pose trouble, or do students seem just as interested to come to Saskatoon as they would to, say, Vancouver or Toronto?
I think we offer, again, many things that bigger centers don't necessarily offer. We have about 3,000 international students, a bit over 3,000. And the quality of service that we can provide is very high, and the student community is very strong. And in some ways, for international students moving from halfway across the world, a medium-sized city such as Saskatoon can be less intimidating, more easily accessible in some ways, and making connections in the prairies is fairly easy. Anyone who has lived in the prairies knows that the prairie people are quite friendly. So,
and one last quick question for you. You talked about the transition to permanent residency. Do you have any quick suggestions or ideas that we should look at?
Definitely provincially, permanent residency, Saskatchewan nominee program pathways, and again, access to work and employment opportunities during their studies. I think that would make the transition to workforce and life after graduation easier.
Thank you.